probably remember learning about the four fundamental forces of nature back in science class, right? Well, what if that entire concept is just plain wrong? In this explainer, we're going to dive into a source that suggests the very forces we measure might not actually exist at all. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first, let's just do a quick recap of the rules of reality as we all know them. You know, the standard model of physics. It's our beautiful, kind of elegant blueprint for how the universe is supposed to work, from the tiniest atoms to the biggest galaxies.
And this whole blueprint is built on four fundamental pillars: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. These are supposed to be the invisible rules running the entire show. And look, it's a solid, well-tested model that has served science incredibly well. But the source we're digging into today asks a really wild question. What if these forces aren't real? And this is where our source material basically shows up with a sledgehammer to that foundation. It puts forward an idea so radical that it doesn't just question the forces we know, it questions the very idea of a force to begin with.
Yup, you read that right. That's the central claim. The argument isn't that we miscounted them or that they work a little differently than we thought. No, it's that they flat out don't exist in nature. Which, of course, raises a massive question. If they're not real, what on earth have physicists been measuring all this time?
To even begin to understand that mind-bending idea, we have to get our heads around a core concept from our source. It's something called the measuring perspective. And trust me, this is the key that unlocks this whole thing. So here's the crucial point. This source argues that forces aren't a property of nature, they're a property of how we measure it. Our tools, our math, our whole scientific point of view, these are what create the divisions we see. We're not discovering forces, we're essentially inventing them by drawing lines on a reality that doesn't have any. So this sets up two totally competing versions of reality. On one side, you have nature as it truly is, or at least as this source claims it is, a single, seamless, unbroken whole. And on the other side, you have the world we experience through our measuring perspective. A world our minds have to chop up into separate objects, getting pushed and pulled around by separate forces just to make sense of it all.
And you know, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. There's actually a precedent for this kind of thinking. Einstein did this exact thing with gravity. He showed it wasn't some mysterious force pulling things together. Instead, he revealed the machinery working behind the scenes, the actual curvature of space-time. So the source just asks a simple question. What if we just haven't found the hidden machinery behind the other three forces yet?
But hold on, because the argument doesn't stop with forces. If you really follow this logic all the way down the rabbit hole, it leads to an even more profound conclusion. One that dismantles not just forces, but the very objects they're supposed to be acting on. The logic kinda unfolds in two steps. So first, you reframe forces as just a product of our perspective. Okay, mind-bending, but maybe we can get there. But then comes the second step, the really big leap. What if objects are also just a construct? What if the whole idea of a chair or a planet or an atom being a distinct, separate thing is also just an illusion created by how we measure the world?
And right there, that's the crucial link. I mean, think about it. You can't have a force without something for it to act on. The very definition of a force requires at least two separate things interacting. So if this source is right, and there are no truly separate objects in nature, well, then the whole idea of force just completely collapses.
So where does all this leave us? Well, it leads us to a final, pretty startling vision of reality. One that replaces our familiar world of things and forces with something much, much simpler. And honestly, a lot weirder.
This is it. This is the ultimate takeaway from the source. The idea that underneath the world, our senses and our instruments have built for us, reality isn't a collection of countless separate parts. It's just one thing. A single, unified, indivisible whole. Just let that sink in for a second. The chair you're sitting on, the screen you're looking at right now, even your own body, according to this viewpoint, they only appear to be separate. They feel distinct because that's the only way our measuring apparatus, our brain, knows how to process reality. We draw lines and create boundaries where, in truth, there might not be any at all. And so, all of this leaves us with one profound final question. If our entire reality, this world of objects and forces that feels so real, is just a story we've constructed, a product of our own limited perspective, then what is truly there? What is the nature of that single unbroken whole
that lies just beyond our ability to measure it.